It's December 1991. The Soviet Union, one of the world's two superpowers, collapses overnight, leaving 15 nations to pick up the pieces. Families torn apart, economies shattered, and a lingering shadow of control that refuses to fade. But instead of embracing your independence, your former ruler keeps pulling you back, threatening your sovereignty, funding uprising, and, in some cases, launching full-scale invasions. That's the reality for many former Soviet states. While Russia may romanticize the Soviet Union's legacy, its former republics remember a very different story. Decades of repression, famine, deportation, and Russification. And today, Russia's actions only fuel the fire. So why do many former Soviet states now openly oppose Russia? Why is Moscow losing its old sphere of influence? And is it too late for Russia to win them back? To understand why former Soviet states hate Russia today, we need to travel back to a time when Stalin's iron fist shaped the destiny of 300 million people across 11 time zones. The Soviet Union wasn't just a political entity. It was a massive social experiment that treated entire nations as laboratory rats. Take the Holodomor of 1932 to 33, a man-made famine that took the lives of 3.5 to 5 million Ukrainians. Stalin didn't just want grain exports. He wanted to crush Ukrainian nationalism by starving it out of existence. But Stalin's appetite for destruction wasn't limited to just Ukraine. In the Baltic states of Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, the Soviet deportations of 1941 and 1949 ripped families apart like paper. Over 200,000 people, teachers, farmers, priests, intellectuals, were loaded onto cattle cars and shipped to Siberian gulags. Many never returned. In Estonia alone, 1 in every 20 people were either killed or deported. By some estimates, between 1941 and 1949 alone, nearly 3.3 million people were deported to Siberia and Central Asia republics, with up to 43% of the resettled population dying from diseases and malnutrition. But physical violence was just one weapon in the Soviet arsenal. The real genius, if we can call it that, lay in cultural genocide through Russification. This wasn't just about teaching Russian in schools. It was about erasing entire civilizations and replacing them with Soviet uniformity. In Central Asia, the Soviets drew borders that deliberately split ethnic groups across multiple republics, ensuring that no single group could claim a unified homeland. The assault on religion was equally brutal. In Muslim Central Asia, mosques were converted into museums or warehouses. In Catholic Lithuania, priests were imprisoned or killed. The KGB didn't just monitor political dissidents, they monitored anyone who dared to pray in their native language. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, these nations thought they were finally free. The early 1990s were filled with hope, flags, and national anthems. But Russia under Boris Yeltsin had other plans. Even a weakened, chaotic Russia couldn't accept the loss of its empire. The first sign came in Moldova in 1992. When Moldova declared independence and moved closer to Romania, Russia armed and supported separatists in Transnistria, creating a frozen conflict that persists today. Russian troops are still there, 33 years later, in a country they have no legal right to occupy. But the most revealing moment came in Chechnya. When this small Caucasus republic declared independence, Russia's response was swift and brutal. The First Chechen War, 1994 to 1996, saw Russian forces level Grozny, the capital, taking the lives of tens of thousands of civilians. The message was clear. No one leaves the Russian orbit alive. Everything changed when Vladimir Putin came into power in 1991. If Yeltsin's Russia was a wounded bear, Putin's Russia became a calculating wolf. He didn't just want to maintain influence over former Soviet states. He wanted to rebuild the empire, one hybrid war at a time. Putin's strategy was brilliant in its cynicism. Why invade countries when you can control them through energy dependence, cyber warfare, and political manipulation? Russia became the world's first true hybrid warfare superpower, perfecting the art of conquering nations without firing a shot. But Putin's real innovation was cyber warfare. Estonia became the testing ground in 2007, when the government decided to relocate a Soviet war memorial from central Tallinn. Russia's response wasn't diplomatic protest or economic sanctions. It was the world's first nation-state cyber attack. For 3 weeks, Estonian government websites, banks, and media outlets were pummeled by massive distributed denial-of-service attacks. ATMs stopped working. Online banking collapsed. The central government couldn't communicate with its citizens. It was a preview of 21st century warfare. The relationship between Ukraine and Russia represents the most tragic example of this post-Soviet hatred. Ukraine, with 45 million people and Europe's second-largest territory, was always the crown jewel Putin couldn't bear to lose. The 2013 Euromaidan protests marked the point of no return. When President Yanukovych abandoned plans to sign an association agreement with the European Union under Russian pressure, Ukrainians again took to the streets. This time, Putin's response was military. The 2014 annexation of Crimea shattered every international law and norm established since World War II. But the ultimate breaking point came on February 24, 2022, when Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Putin's goal was simple: erase Ukraine as an independent nation and absorb it back into the Russian Empire. The invasion has killed hundreds of thousands, created millions of refugees, and turned Ukraine from a country with mixed feelings about Russia into one united in its hatred for its aggressor. Ukraine's experience sent shockwaves across every former Soviet state. If Russia was willing to invade Europe's second-largest country to prevent it from joining Western institutions, what would it do to smaller, weaker nations? The Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania watched Ukraine's fate with terror. These 3 nations, with a combined population smaller than Los Angeles, knew they could be next. Their NATO membership provided some protection, but Putin's willingness to challenge international law made even Article 5 guarantees seem uncertain. Belarus represents perhaps the most complex case in Russian relations with former Soviet states. Alexander Lukashenko, often called Europe's last dictator, has ruled Belarus since 1994 with Russian support. Russia's information warfare campaign against former Soviet states represents one of the most sophisticated propaganda operations in history. Using a combination of state media, social media manipulation, and useful people, Moscow has perfected the art of making people doubt reality itself. The strategy is simple but effective. Flood the information space with so much contradictory information that people give up trying to distinguish truth from lies. When citizens can't trust any source of information, they become passive and cynical. Exactly what authoritarian leaders want. By 2025, the post-Soviet space will have essentially divided into 3 camps. Countries firmly in the Western orbit, Baltic states, countries trapped in Russian influence, Belarus, Central Asian states, and battleground states fighting for their independence, Ukraine, Georgia, and Moldova. The hatred that former Soviet states now feel toward Russia represents one of history's great strategic failures. Putin inherited significant influence over countries that shared languages, cultures, and economic ties with Russia. Through aggressive policies designed to maintain imperial control, he has systematically destroyed these relationships and pushed former allies into the arms of Russia's competitors. Until Russia abandons its imperial ambitions and accepts its neighbors as truly independent nations, this hatred will continue to burn. The choice is Russia's: continue the path of imperial aggression and face growing isolation, or embrace a post-imperial future based on mutual respect and genuine cooperation. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe.